Hello, my friends. Welcome this week. Another awesome celebrity, and this week was Jody Aberdeen. And we talked about some of the challenges of coaching in the world that we were in and how to help people move forward. And I think you'll find it really interesting. So give it a listen, give it a like, give it a comment, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Take care. Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. And we're recording. Okay, so hello, my friends. Welcome. It's always amazing to virtually see people. And this is Heather, and this is the Back to Me podcast. It's our weekly celebrity chat, and I love having all these celebrity people on because they're so fun to talk to. And this week is the super fabulous and outstanding Jody Aberdeen. Woo! Can you hear the applause? I can hear the applause. And we're going to talk all things wellness, of course, because that's what we talk about. And there's always a different way to look at wellness. It has so many different facets. And we were having a super interesting talk about pre-talk about coaching, and our pre-talk, just pre-talk, talking about rest, which is also amazing. But let's start with, because your background is so interesting. So do you want to give a little bit about who you are?
Sure, I'd love to.
The people?
Yeah. So Heather, so once again, I want to say for the record, thank you for waking up to do this recording. I know, and knowing that afternoons are better for you, I appreciate that you're meeting me in the morning. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me on. So I've worked as so I work currently. I'm building a mindset coaching practice, but with a few changes that I'm looking to create that I feel are appropriate for the post 2020 world. I have a working background in, different jobs going back something like, wow, how old am I? Like 20 years at this point.
Shh, don't tell them.
I know, right? I bring a lot of different aspects to it. So I've worked, before mindset coaching, I worked as a ghostwriter for many years. I still do that. So providing, writing books for professionals, entrepreneurs, and other coaches, most notably in that whole self-improvement genre. I'm also a fiction author myself. I prefer the independent publishing gives me some control over that. And I've worked. I'm currently working in the craft brewing hospitality side of the business to make some money.
You got all bases covered.
I've got a lot of stuff covered. And my working background comes from places like logistics, transportation, bookstore retail. I've done like pharmaceutical distribution. I've worked in the government. I've been around basically.
In your really short life, you've been around.
Yeah, I have a, yeah. But this is it, right? I think like it's not about the time or the age. It's about how much stuff you've done with it, I suppose. And one of the things that I used to say, this is actually, I went to university as well, and I have an arts degree, and I had thought about doing something like this. Coach wasn't in my vocabulary when I graduated. I went to be master. I did history and English as a major, poli-sci as a minor, and I wanted to become a professor.
Wow, cool.
But I had seen, this was self-serving. My grade average wasn't quite what I needed for the master's. So part of the way that I rationalized it at the time, although it was also true for its own sake, was I would, before I get into any type of teaching role, I would like to get my hands dirty in the actual world, right? Before coming back. And that journey led me to all those different things, plus personal development. So taking seminars, certifications, from trainings as various as Landmark, Bob Proctor, Millionaire Mind Intensive that T. Harv Eker created, and being a junkie overall.
Right.
for in the self-help world.
Self-help junkie.
Yeah,
Hello,
100%. Yeah,
friends. My
yeah,
name is Heather.
yeah.
I'm a self-help
Self-help
junkie.
junkie. And I have to say, like, it's for all of the flack that even I give this work at times, right? They say, they I had a friend who was in the Navy said, "Nobody insults your ship but you," right?
Okay.
Because that's the love that you have, right?
Right.
I am a product of personal development work, and the health and wellness industry in that regard, right? The mindset work,
Yeah.
etc. And for example, like I was so shy, even into my early 20s, I couldn't pick up the phone half the time. Yeah.
Me too. I
Yeah.
actually couldn't order pizza.
No.
I
And
know.
I mean, God forbid somebody called asking for some, from the government, like a tax thing or something, right? Like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Oh my God, I have to
You,
answer the phone. Are
you
you
just want to
crazy?
throw yourself on the mercy of the court, right? Like it was like that. And, um, but so this work helped me kind of really break out of my shell over time. And, it's not, that's, so I see the beauty of it. Where I've come to now as I'm, I'm 41, I'm in a place in my life where I've had enough experiences, I think, where I found something I want to contribute. And it's not all sunshine and pretty butterflies.
Life is not.
No, but
Right.
here's where I've come to. I got certified in an NLP program a year ago, and that got me back into coaching. I'm forever grateful to my trainers for that, for getting me into this world now. That was the time. A funny thing happened as I started building my practice in the summer of 2021. We're a year and a bit into the plague at that point, right?
Let's
And
call it what it is.
yeah, yeah, and and I was looking at the templates that I was given, not just by my trainers, but other people I've worked with, other groups. And I tried them. I did the things. I said, okay, well, here's some value, and then here's a call to action, like the usual copywriting templates and
Yeah.
coaching templates, and the same bumper stickery aphorisms, right? That nobody really says without, critically anymore, right? They just kind of say it without, parroting it. And I realized, this feels wrong, and something was off, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. Turns out there's a number of things that were off, and the summary that I've come to, the key dilemma that's informing my new practice, right, is this: we coach people to be successful in a dysfunctional, sick society that is steadily destroying the ecosystem of the planet, right? The global ecosphere.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, regardless of what anyone else has said, right? I was looking within the coaching world to see if anyone else has come to this realization. A few people have, but by and large, we are not critically looking at what constitutes success. And
Right.
and if success means that you become just another person who is consuming, another good capitalist, consumerist person, you're part of the problem. And all the I think that this is a sweeping generalization, but I don't think it's far off from the mark. So I'll say this: all of the macro problems we are facing, whether it's the virus, the responses to the virus, wars, not, Ukraine's got our attention, but there was Afghanistan, Yemen, lesser known places that are they're no less important, right? Around the world, that are suffering from
Continual
war and famine.
conflict seems to.
Continual conflict, rising prices here at home for those of us who have those privileges, right? The
Mhm.
fact that we have to regard simple things like food and equal treatment under the law as privileged things, right?
Right.
The society has built it that way. So, but I'm supposed to ignore that, and that didn't feel right for me. So what I've been looking at is, matching the benefits of personal growth with a format that is not in keeping with some of those consumerist and capitalist ideas, but that also has to make some money because I do need money to pay my rent.
Coin
But
of the realm, I've heard it called.
the coin of the realm, exactly, right? Rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, all
Yeah.
that whole mindset, right? I get that. And there's a tension in there, and I don't pretend to know decisively what it is, because I think that's also part of the problem. What if what if hiring coaches and facilitators to give you the answers is part of the problem too? Shouldn't our job be to ask you questions to stimulate your own discernment? And these are the types of things that I'm working on, and that's basically what
But I
I've been
mean,
up
I
to.
can't disagree with you. Like,
Mhm.
when you were talking, I was picturing them, the band playing and people dancing in the Titanic while it was sinking.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
it's like, don't look over there.
Mhm.
Let's just continue to party. And my partner and I, my partner did his master's in environmental leadership, and he's super in tune with it. And he'll vacillate between, what's going on? We have to help people understand. And pardon the French, but screw it, just party hard to the end, because we're leading a parade that no one's following. But it
Mhm.
isn't like, and it was like, and this might have been what you were saying, because this is what came to my mind as you were saying it, is if we can help people find a version of success that benefits the greater themselves and the greater whole at the same time, I mean, that would be my utopia, really.
Mhm.
And I've said that in, pardon me, in other contexts, where I'm like, if I can help people find a higher vibration, for lack of a better word, like a happier way to live in the world, maybe they will stop being down on themselves, which will bring them down on other places, which maybe can ripple outwards. Maybe,
Mhm.
like, this is kind of all of my, let's try this experiment,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't this be fun if this actually worked?
Yeah.
And it is true. Every coaching program you take, because a lot of people, when they start coaching, and coaching, I feel like in some ways has almost become a, not to um, attack my ship, because
Mhm.
I love coaching and I love helping people, but it feels like it's become that like side hustle that everybody is doing, because
Mhm.
it's like, I can't work in my job, I'm going to go become a coach. But
Mhm.
I wouldn't change being a coach. I mean, I love being a coach and I love helping people, but every course you take, people want that tactile, almost like, I need the steps. When they start
Mhm.
coaching, they don't feel confident. I need the steps. I need the steps. And I understand that's where all those templates come from. But it is true that if it doesn't feel authentic to you and your message,
Mhm.
it's hard to be successful at it. And it doesn't feel like you're in the right place. And some people just slog through. But um, like, I've, over the years, been developing my own approach to it, because I'm kind of like you. I was like, I don't like these steps.
Mhm.
Change them.
Yeah.
I got to go back and ask, when did you suddenly be able to pick up the phone or answer the phone? when did
Oh.
you find your when did you find your I'm okay, I can be seen?
It wasn't a single, yeah, wow, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Right.
I would say, looking back now, it wasn't a single moment, which I think is also part of the mythos that we talk about. We think that the client breakthrough happens in a single, eureka moment.
The
It
light
doesn't.
shines down.
Yeah,
Angels sing.
no, that's some bad Hollywood screenwriting, right? It's a trope, a really bad one. How I think, for me, it just took place in a series of different moments here and there. One of the gigs I worked, for example, was I had a stint at a really kind of what turned out to be a very shady vacation sales thing, right?
Right.
But the part of the duties that they gave, I was like, I needed the money. I worked there for 3 months, and was very educational though, because it required me to step out of my skin. The first task they gave me was meeting people at the door.
Oh.
That was the biggie, and then from meeting people at the door to getting to that took about, I remember, 2 days of doing that broke the shyness barrier. right, meeting eye contact, saying hello, smiling, right? It felt artificial at first. There is a certain fake it till you become it thing, right?
Totally.
So I will, there is benefit to that type of training. It never feels good at first, and then you gradually ease into it. The other thing too, I think, was just working at a call center concierge. That was the job that immediately followed through someone I had known at that one workplace. So things follow in sequence, and
They
then
made you talk on the phone. They
yeah,
made you talk to people. Get out there.
yeah, and now you have, and then the cool part about call center work when you have a quality driven business, right? I won't name them because liability, etc. But
Yeah, it's okay.
it was a beautiful place. It was a workplace that I actually cried when I left on my last
Wow.
day, right, for another job that I thought I wanted. And but while I was there, it was very educational. And part of what they do is they train you to develop that phone voice.
Oh yes.
And oh yes, right. And it's a combination of like it's like acting a bit, but you're not acting. You are performing a function in a certain way, right? Which includes your voice tone, includes that. And when you create that kind of persona, it's a little bit like I think Hal Jordan, right? Like that superhero where he just creates the forms, the Green Lantern.
Oh right.
Yeah, it's
I
like
was like
the form that he's taking, right?
Yeah. Wonder Twins. Do you remember Wonder Twins?
I remember the name, but I probably have. Yeah, I think form of. Yeah, I
I'm a
remember.
little
Yeah,
older than you.
I do. I was there for the tail end of that, I think, as a kid. It's like the form will take the impact of that. So they're not really seeing you. They're seeing a representation of you, which actually ties into the neurolinguistics of it.
I was going to say, that's very NLP, right?
Yeah, the NLP says you're never really seeing the person. You're seeing a representation of the person based, both on what they're choosing to show of themselves and how your filters are interpreting them, right? Based on a number of things, from your immediate mood in that moment to your long-term thinking, right? And when that's how I got out of my shell. It's basically I didn't get out of my shell. I put more of my shell out there, and that was how I was able to go out. It's a different form.
You designed your form.
Yeah, so there is definitely benefits to this work. And now, working at the two craft breweries that I work at, when I pick up the phone, I go right into that same mode. And
right.
Some of the
I'm putting on my super cape.
Yeah, but it's not, you can turn it on like that. With any skill, it can be learned over time. And it's like, this is where I think personal growth has been, right? Is getting into the framework mentally and emotionally where you can take in new data, see things in a different way, and then practice through action and repetition. It's always repetition. This is true whether it's martial arts, cooking, baseball, hockey, any type of.
I've been trying to learn French for 2 years.
French languages, yeah,
right?
yeah. It's the repetition of it, right? And having and leading this back to coaching, right? The coach is someone who encourages you to repeat the actions, right? And to hold the space for it. And coaching,
don't give up after your first try.
No, don't give up, right? And you keep going. And so again, it ties into the benefits of this work. And I think, like, what I came to is that in the post 2020 world, sure, we're building the skill sets to do things like make money, to lose weight, to get healthy, to find the relationship of your dreams, and to acquire certain material goals that you have on your vision board. We can coach you in those skills. We have the technology, right?
Yes.
We can do these. And to what end? It's the to what end that preoccupied me, because so much. So I'll share this. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend and we said how there are so many things about. He's a screenwriter, and he will never give himself the title, but he has written a screenplay, which makes him a screenwriter regardless of what he's done with it, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about how he doesn't feel legitimate for doing that because he hasn't sold anything. He hasn't gotten a Netflix series, right? And I said, it's the same thing with becoming a writer. A writer writes. If you're writing, you can claim the title. It's just we have this kind of almost classist view of, you're not really a writer unless you've hit this criteria, this criteria, this criteria, this criteria. It's like, well, putting your work out there to be seen, maybe we could debate that. Maybe that's the difference, right? But it's the same. It's a similar thing to what another colleague had said years ago. He said, Jody, you've never actually seen a real concert. I was like, what do you mean? I've gone to festivals, right? The free festivals, right? Yeah, but you never bought tickets to see a concert. I was like, so are you saying, and I thought of the absurdity at this time of just like, you're saying that, so what I heard wasn't music because I didn't pay $50 to go sit in like the nosebleeds. Like, what was it, right? And that was
That's just strange.
Yeah, this is the extent to what my colleague yesterday talked about. We have so many things that are tied into late capitalism, right? So many threads. We could spend our entire lifetimes decoupling those things, which include, if you're an artist, do you have to make a living from that? No.
I hope
right?
not, because I call myself an artist.
Yeah. If you're an author, are you any less an author because you're not Stephen King? You haven't had like millions of sales and had your work, optioned for film and TV. Are you any less anything else? Insert whatever, because you haven't succeeded in the capitalist system, right? And like that's part of the dilemma.
It's our measure of everything, right?
It's our measure of everything. So I think bringing this back to this, right? If I have right now, I've created 2 experimental masterminds, right?
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, to add in these different things. And I had the second cohort begin yesterday. 2 days ago. And I found myself going back into the old habits of like, okay, here's some accountabilities. What are you going to get done, right? And I thought this is essential. You need to meet people where they are, right? Part of the symptom of capitalism is that we're perpetually incomplete, right?
Right.
They call it the hedonic treadmill, right?
Yeah. And it's so true.
It is. Once you achieve a success, here's the next one. You go and do that. Here's the next one, right? And this, to what end? So what if we decided that there are limits, right? We are in the West, freedom is part of our creed.
Right.
But we don't critically think about what freedom means. We've seen this in the past winter with the freedom convoys, the freedom this, the freedom that, right? And regardless of where you stand on the issues, and I have my opinions on those, of course, right?
Yes.
The central point is that freedom confuses us because we don't really think about it. Like a tree in the forest, and I keep bringing this back to nature. A tree in the forest needs to draw nutrients out of the soil. It doesn't drain the entire soil of nutrients. It only takes what it needs. So it's honoring a limit that's put on it. In our previous offline conversation, I might have chatted with you about a British mythologist named Dr. Martin Shaw. He does storytelling, and
writing that down.
Yeah, so he is part of the I guess we can call them the hat-wearing, somewhat aged, bearded, poetic, mythopoetic crowd, right?
Okay, that's quite a title. That's
it is
awesome.
And this is what I found. I found that the people that I'm gravitating to in resolving this dilemma of like coaching people to be successful in a dysfunctional society, the people I'm gravitating to are not Tony Robbins. They are not Bob Proctor. They are these folks who spent time out in the woods, rejecting the overall society, because they realize that it's the central point of disconnection is actually that between us and the land,
right?
And it's we in as a Westerner, I'm speaking as now, right? As a Westerner, I can see this is why we appropriate indigenous cultures. We feel like we are missing this thing. So rather than try to go back to a time when we weren't like this, which we did have a time, everyone's DNA has a time. This
you
DNA
had to have at some point.
Yeah, where we had to live on the land, right? It may be further back thousands of years, but it is there, right? If you want to do the work, that's also something that I'm experimenting with in my groups. It's like ancestry, not channeling, right? Necessarily, because channeling is everyone can't be a channeler, right?
No.
At least and even if everyone is a channeler, there's varying degrees of clarity, right, and discernment that go into that. So rather than so in my view, that's unreliable. What is reliable is that I have DNA in my body that came from somewhere. I can have that DNA tested now. We have the technology, and I can go and see where this came from. My ancestors come from the Uttar Pradesh region of northern India.
I've been there.
Have you been there? Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. And
people live very close to the land there for the most part.
Yeah, even still, right? Like, and we were conquered by the British, and before that, we were conquered by the Mughals, right, who came in from Central Asia.
Yeah.
Which means that I could have some of that DNA in my blood. But the thing is, I can then say, right, I could claim an ancestry, reasonably so, in the forests and foothills of the Himalayas in that region. So I can say that I'm from somewhere. Now, this doesn't mean that if I go there now, they're going to be welcoming me. That doesn't happen, right? No, we diverged, right? Like my ancestors and whoever was there, we diverged. But it's not a matter of finding meaning in the past either. It's just an idea that I've been somewhere, right? The rootedness of it. So bringing this back to Martin Shaw, being drawn to him as a mythical storyteller. He's a professor, but he's not dry and academic. He realizes that myth has to be brought to vivid life in the telling of it,
right?
Which you can't quantify or you can't put into easily fit it into an academic curriculum, right? It's not just one person standing there talking. Sometimes you have to beat a drum while you're saying it. Sometimes you have to have some music. For example, you need to have a fire going. You need to have maybe only an audience of maybe 10 people, etc. Point is, he went into the woods on a retreat in late 2019 in Devon County in England, in Britain, right, in Wales, I think, where his ancestors are from. Spent some time in the winter, much milder winter than us, I guess.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah,
for the most part.
And he had his experiences, and he re-emerged into civilization as he knew it, not as he knew it, in March of 2020.
Whoa, what a time to come back.
He left the world one way and came back, and he never got back into it. He never returned. He came back into a different world. And the thing that started the seed crystallization in my head was when he said, I wonder if we've been visited by the goddess of limits.
Oh.
Which ties back into the whole freedom thing, right? Like,
right.
Freedom and limitation work together, but we only talk about the one in this culture. And you see it manifested in subdivision sprawl, eating up our farmland at a time when we need to have food security at home. We see it in the never-ending consumption that produces seemingly never-ending stacks of garbage, right? And as if that's not enough, we think that the same tools that we use to build this house can somehow fix it, and say things like, well, let's try to use technology to do what trees have been doing. Let's create. It's like, just don't cut down the trees. How about that, right? We don't think about doing that because, God forbid, I need my freedom. I am free to do this. And you can't tell me what not to do.
Right.
And this is where the freedom confuses us, because the freedom to be fulfilled comes from respecting the limit.
Right. So it's almost like, I'm just thinking all these mythology things. It's like, or even, who's that poet who I really like? I can't find my files. It's like, okay. You need both sides. You need sadness to have happiness. Like you need to recognize both. A lot of people don't even define what freedom is. It's just this mythical thing. I need to be free. So if you try to dive down, like thinking of in a coaching context, if you're trying to figure out what someone wants and all they can say is, I want to be happier or more free. You're like, what is that? What is that? Does that mean you're just dancing down the street? Like, you need to put it into something. And it has to be a container. And containers aren't just this big, wide open thing. It's like, and containers have limits. So it's so interesting. Like I haven't actually heard anyone talk about it in context of the planetary wellness, which is, I think it's important. It is important. Yeah. And when you're trying to help someone with, like, do you ever listen to, is it Joe Dispenza who talks about people don't actually have freedom of choice?
Yeah, they're in a program.
Yeah.
He's mentioned that a few times. Yeah. Yeah, I actually follow some of Joe's meditations. I like him because he's another person who's bridging a gap that I've seen in this industry, where he doesn't want to make assertions about his meditation practices. He will ask people to hook themselves up to MRIs while they're meditating so he can get the data.
Right.
I like that approach too. And he's right. Like people do snap into programs and they think they're free, but they're not.
Right. It's kind of like the Matrix. Yeah. Are you in it? Are you not in it?
Yeah.
And isn't there a new one coming out where they
metaverse?
Were actually still in it?
Oh yeah. Like, so it's interesting you mentioned that. A thought I've been grappling with lately is that, let's say, it's occurred to me that since I was born and raised and grew up, and when kids begin to have an awareness of the greater community and society that they live in, it occurred to me that the idea that I could just go somewhere, anywhere in the land, and dig a foundation for a house and maybe build my own cabin anywhere, came secondly to the notion that you had to buy something to live in it. That's because growing up, I hear my parents talk, oh, we moved houses, right? When I was 8 years old, we moved houses. And when I was a baby, we moved from an apartment to a house, right? Both times, there was no sense of you had to go to an empty place and build your own place, right?
Right.
It was like,
it's already there.
The land has already been divided and parceled out for me. And then we see, okay, so that means that in order for you to have a place to live, you need to have the means with which to pay for that place to live. That's the paradigm. That's my baseline paradigm as me in this life, because that was the first impression I got. But that's not how it's been for so long, where you need to participate in. We've been in the Matrix since birth, multiple generations now. The Matrix is the capitalist society, right? It's the manifested expression of a single set of ideologies and practices and creeds, right? Where that says you have to buy your dwelling, which means you have to have money, which means you have to, whether you want to or not, you are participating in the system.
Right.
Now, we've seen what happens, especially here in Hamilton, where I live, right? Hamilton, Ontario, right?
The hammer.
And the hammer, yeah. We saw over the course of the pandemic, there were people who come here, the cost of living increases, their wages do not, or they lose their jobs, God forbid. And they have everything. They've literally put everything into coming here. They lose everything, and now they have to go and live on the street. So tent communities were popping up all over the city.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during the pandemic, there was a moratorium on the existing law on the books that required the police to disperse these encampments. When that moratorium expired, you suddenly saw people getting, the police showing up and dismantling things, representatives from the cities, clearing them out,
here too.
Taking their stuff. Yeah, it's been happening a lot of places, right? And the thought of, like, so they tried to play the game, they lost, and the second that you end up below that homeless category, when you end up in that homeless category, you're not only invisible, because we all look away. I'm guilty of this too. I'm not on my high horse.
No.
I've had moments, if I drive up, right, if I'm stopped at an intersection, somebody asks me for money, I do look away. I'm not even going to pretend that I don't, because I'm uncomfortable in that moment. If I do have a coin handy, I might put it out there, but I'm actually looking at the person thinking, okay, is this dangerous?
Yeah.
Is this is the fear that's built into it, right? And I think it's important to not pretend that I don't do this, right? For me anyway.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, and so I'm also recognizing in my moment I'm part of the problem. So this is not saying that I'm better than anyone by saying this, but you're invisible and we don't want to look at you, right? So because you don't want to play the game, but you need somewhere to live. But when you go to try to set up something, the land has already been parceled out and reowned, and right, so you can't live there. You literally can't live anywhere. And the only logical conclusion, if you really want to take this, right, is that we are forcing, the only place you can go conceivably is the wilderness. But
And
we
even
don't,
some of that is parceled out.
and even some of that is parceled out, especially if you're in Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
This land was divided and conquered and put on a grid long time ago. And so there's very little wilderness. And even if you were in the wilderness, can you hunt? I can't hunt. Can you build a trench and a tent and a shelter out of the materials you have? I can't do those things, right? And this is what, one of my other teachers, Steve Jenkinson, this is what he calls the poverty of our times, which is not just the material poverty. It's the fact that we have a poverty of the skills to live with the land. We don't have a relationship with it. And
we've forgotten everything we knew.
Yeah, it's not even that we've forgotten. We've had 3, 4, 5, 6 generations removed since we got more technological and comfortable. We never learned it. So you can't forget something you never learned.
I was making a comment probably yesterday to my partner. I said, you know what's going to kill us? Our need for convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Because of all places, we were in the liquor store, or he was in the liquor store. Mm-hmm. And now you don't even have to mix your own cocktails. They come in their own individual bottles. And we were talking about the packaging. I'm like, but it's more convenient because it's so inconvenient. I mean, it's alcohol, which we can have a whole conversation about that, but so inconvenient to take a bottle and pour and mix. And I'm just like, it's convenience that will kill us in the end. We keep trying to make our lives easier and easier. And maybe that is our concept somehow subconsciously of freedom. Everything has to be easy, but it's not. It's just the price is so high for that.
It is. And again, it's like I'm raised in a convenience culture. I love convenience.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to get uncomfortable. And that's a privilege. And, we use privilege as a club sometimes, right? And I don't want to use it in this regard, right? Because we all have varying levels of it. It is a privilege, and it's a privilege of doing decently enough in the game. Playing in the matrix, you're winning the simulation at that point to some degree. When you can, I would love to order my food in. I love doing that, but it's costly and it contributes to the problem because now I have more garbage. I'm usually employing a courier driver, like an Uber driver, right? Uber Eats driver, for example, who's putting out all that the CO2 emissions in their own vehicle.
Yeah.
And the wear and tear, spending their own gas to come and deliver me food for less than minimum wage half the time, right? You tip well, and that's okay, but then how much does Uber take? Like these are the things, right? There's always a cost involved in almost everything we do, and it wasn't always like this, and I've never known that time, but it does exist, so it's worth honoring. Excuse me. So, what to do? Bringing this back to coaching and wellness, right? The more I look at it, the more I actually think that experiencing generalized anxiety, and I am not a therapist, and I'm not a psychologist. No. I do not have a background in this, so this is an amateur outsider opinion, right? And I'm wondering.
This is a person with experience and keen observation skills. Let's say that.
Yeah, I'm in the bleachers on this one, but also not because I have I did get diagnosed with generalized anxiety a while ago, right?
Okay.
And I have depression on top of that, which my doctor at the time said the depression is sometimes a counter. It's when my body is like tried to respond to the anxiety, but it's overcompensated. So now instead of feeling super present, I'm just depressed and super down, and I just want to withdraw. Right.
Right.
That's me. I'm speaking strictly of me, not anybody else. Right.
Right. Okay.
So I want to be clear on that. And that's another thing. Coaches need to be more clear in their communication about that. I don't like coaches who make claims to things that they don't know. Just say you don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
It's okay not to know.
It's okay not to know. So I'm speaking as this, right? I wonder if feeling generalized anxiety is the sane response to what's happening in the greater world. Look at all that's going on. If you just you can look in your immediate environment and get grounded in that, and maybe everything is fine here, and that is good. We should focus on that a lot for our own sense of rootedness and calm. The best that, and to be able to function. And the greater society is in a state of collapse already. There's no single apocalypse. I mean, we talk a lot about, especially since the Ukraine war, what if what if we go to nuclear war? Well, we go to nuclear war, an asteroid hits, a devastating global earthquake of the type that used to happen to the planet millions of years ago decides to strike, there are all sorts of manners of ways in which things can end in an instant. This is true. What's probable is that we see something like the Roman Empire declining. It's not going to be a single thing that does us in. It's going to be a series of events over a course of time. And that's what we're experiencing. You don't need to wait for the collapse. One example that I've heard in a conversation, a more conservative-minded person said, "Oh, they've been saying that the climate's been failing for the last 50 years and it hasn't failed yet." That's because this person has been this person has internalized the same thing, that it has to happen in a single moment, right? And it's not. The fact, the place that you need to look isn't necessarily, if you don't believe the environmentalists, if you think it's all fake news, see what the insurance payouts are, because the insurance companies don't lie.
No, they do not.
No.
And they don't like to pay out.
And they don't like to pay out. Look where the lawsuits are, right? Because the money, you follow the money, and you find that that speaks for itself. Look at the premiums. What are you putting a premium on? What are you starting to offer services on, right? Insurance companies will tell you the truth, if anything.
Yeah.
By virtue of the fact that if your building's getting lost in flooding, more flooding than used to happen. Well, why is that? Look at the investments in futures, right? All this speculation, right? The one of the guys who was in The Big Short, right? The people who shorted the housing market in 2008 before the collapse.
Right.
Everyone doubted him at the time. That's a great film, by the way, The Big Short. If you want to get of the mindset stuff, right? They explain the housing and the financial aspects very simply. But it's this notion of this, right? If you look at certain things, right, almost everything that we do, and including much in the personal growth industry too, if you actually look at the details, it's empty. There's nothing there. It's an empty suit, and it's a house of cards, or whatever other metaphors you want to use, right? The tiniest little thing, it all comes falling down. And this is what we're having, right? But that investor guy, Michael Burry, when he was right about the housing market and the mortgages, the thing that he's shifted over to now, the only thing he invests in is water.
Ooh, interesting.
Everyone should be a little bit creeped out by that. Why? Because, we have water. Water's fine. Water's not fine. So this is a wellness podcast. I want to bring this back because this is part of it.
We're going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, we're going down the rabbit hole. So why this matters is this, right? Much of what we're feeling right now, it's not enough to just coach you, in my view, to go and become another great successful person, right? Steve Jenkinson had remarked that self-improvement in a world that's in swoon is dereliction of duty.
Right.
And capitalism has us perpetually empty. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. So here's what it is, right? My dilemma that I'm working on in my coaching is this. How do I get you sufficiently actualized in your money, your health, in your relationships, so that you can be useful to contributing to the healing out there? And I don't have a name for it yet. I'm tentatively calling it depth coaching, but that seems a little too close to depth psychology, which I'm not qualified to administer. Right. So I'm working on it. It's a work in progress, and it seems to entail, like right now, it entails things like, okay, getting firmly grounded in what is factual, right? Which includes the stuff you don't want to look at, both on the small scale and the big scale. And this means deprogramming years and years of positive vibes only training. Right. And one interesting way to do that, like if you think that that's the toxic positivity isn't a thing, one thing to notice is that almost everybody who has that live, laugh, love sign out on the front of their house is the worst person you know. Right.
It's like, everything here is fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's like, I've seen so many coaches get prone to things like, for the sake of their if you didn't want to get the shot, I suddenly saw you validating people who appeared as white supremacist rallies.
Oh my Lord.
Because you weren't thinking about the connections between the two, right? Because you weren't aware of that, or if you were aware, you didn't care because you were only preoccupied with the one issue, which is like getting or not getting the shot. that suddenly overrode all of your other considerations, right? These are all symptoms of the bigger problem. And it has to start with, okay, what do I need to be okay where I'm at? And it could be that I'm okay now,
Could
right?
be.
It could be. And if you're okay now, okay, great. How can I get you plugged back into the outside, right? My way of doing that for me is actually doing this work.
Right.
It's actually I'm getting more involved in local. There's some local groups that are preoccupied with the health of the Niagara Escarpment in my area. I'm starting to meet with those folks and seeing what I can do. It could be simple things like noticing that in my neighborhood, we're noticing what's sprouting right now. And starting, the whole think globally, act locally thing. Well, think locally first and then expand outward, right?
Right.
Being from a particular place and knowing that your DNA at one point came from a few particular places, at least in one place longer than most, for example, finding meaning in that, right? Getting really in depth that way and in a non-mystical framework. You bring whatever belief systems you want, but we have too much now of focusing on elsewhere, whether it's settling Mars. I'm not saying we shouldn't colonize Mars, but colonizing Mars as an escape from dealing with Earth problems is not the way to go.
No, it's like, okay, we can't figure this out. Let's go
Yeah.
try it somewhere else.
On the other hand, getting involved in psychedelics for the sake of having a mystical journey for the sake of escaping these problems is also the same problem. It's escapism, right? Appropriating indigenous cultures and other cultures because you don't want to bother doing the ancestry work on yourself because one reason or the other it's not convenient, right?
Doesn't seem as cool.
Doesn't seem as cool, but this is part of the untangling things from capitalism, right? And in the process, so I've had a few people as I've experimented in this. I didn't want to make any claims, so they're not paying for this yet. I do want to charge a sustainable rate for it at some point. But I know that I'm okay on my own as of right now. I just need to make my cost of living expenses and a little bit of fun money, and then I can keep doing what I'm doing, right? I'm able to do this because I'm as of this recording, I am a single man. I have a dog to take care of. I don't have kids, which is a big expense.
It is.
It makes me wonder, why is it a big expense? Is this another way that capitalism has made child rearing a class issue?
Oh my gosh, there's so much involved.
There's so many you can do. And again, we could spend a lifetime untangling these threads, and I don't have, we don't have time now. Obviously,
people will just have to go have something to eat and go have some sleep. We could talk all day, but
yeah. So these are the things, right, that I want to untangle. So the preliminary results I've gotten is this: one participant, one of the exercises I have everyone do is walk around your neighborhood if you haven't done that. You know how many people have just been commuting in and out of a subdivision and not really noticing what's in the subdivision?
Subdivisions didn't used to have sidewalks. Like
No.
some of them still don't.
Some of them
you
still
don't walk, you
No.
drive.
Yeah. And it's like, I am not a fan of subdivision housing. The architecture itself is oppressive. You convince everybody who lives there, and I grew up in a subdivision, mind you, right? But no, so everyone there thinks they have their own tiny little castle, their own tiny little property, and it's so expensive. You frequently have to take a job that's across town that pays you the amount. So you have to drive there. You work hard, you wear yourself out, you come home, right? And then you just want to stay in your house all the time. You're not talking to your neighbors.
Yeah.
Your neighbors, in fact, become a threat because they say, oh, no, such and such is disrupting my harmony, and I only have so many minutes in a day to feel harmonious. And then what do you spend your weekends doing? Shopping at a mall to buy the shit that you need, excuse my language, to buy the shit that you need to maintain your little castle, right?
To make sure that your castle is as good as the castle next to you.
Yeah, which means that that's the time that you could have been spending enjoying it, but you're not. So it's like it's a nightmare. And so, but getting out and seeing something beautiful that's not there on foot, if you can, right? If if it's ableist, and I need to figure out how to mind if you don't have the ability to walk, but having someone take you at the very least, right? Just getting out and seeing the place without being in a vehicle necessarily.
Right.
And that's what I'm working on too, and developing something that's not, that's within a framework that's accessible for everybody, right? Reconnecting with the here and now, with the physical, using your intellect, using your critical faculties, and then saying, okay, and then also understanding this, and this is the harder truth, right? If people 50 years ago were telling us that the environment's collapsing, then the time to have done something was actually 50 years ago. I'm not saying it's not an excuse to do nothing now,
No.
but it means that we now, whether we want to or not, we're living with the consequences of it. Ironically, I think of a New Age teaching from Abraham Hicks, where Abraham had said, if you want to stop a car from rolling down a hill, the place to stop the car is at the top of the hill. If you try to stop the car midway down, you're going to get run over. Yeah. So the thing to do when you have momentum is to, unfortunately, you have to let it run its course. And this is the consequence that we're living. We're living in the world of consequences now. And as privileged people in North America, it's going to hit us last.
Yeah.
It's hitting everybody else first. And they've been experiencing that, whether it's a refugee crisis. Any one of us can be the same way any one of us can become homeless at any given time for any reason. Any one of us can become refugees at any given time for any reason.
Yeah.
And this is what I think horrifies people about Ukraine, is that in the culture, we don't associate why we were able to dismiss Afghanistan and Yemen and Ethiopia and all these other places that are war torn, have been for a few years now, is that it doesn't look like the culture we associate with the West. They don't look like us. And but Ukrainians do. And now
we have a DJ from the Ukraine that we listen to all the time, and she had to escape with her family in her car. Yeah. We're like, what?
Yeah. Hey, it's not like we don't, as Canadians, it's not like we don't live next to a major power that could go rogue at any point.
I'm moving north.
But you see, this is it. Like it's any one of us at any given time, right?
Yeah.
And this is part of it. It's like, we are living with the consequences, and we have to let them unfold, which means that what can we do? Well, now we need to embrace, I think, once we are filled up, this idea that Rabindranath Tagore, the Indian poet, had said, to paraphrase, that it's time for us to start planting the seeds of trees whose shade we won't enjoy.
Right.
We need, and I think of the Anishinaabe and other indigenous tribes in our area that said that they don't make decisions without thinking of the impact 7 generations down the line.
Right. Even in Chinese culture, it's all, because my husband's family is Chinese, it's the long game. It's like, now is not as important as what will be the future.
Yeah. Right? And it means that if you're planting those seeds, we have to reconcile the soil that we're in, which is still late capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So we do have to work with what we got, as you said, right? We got to, we're playing into this, we're playing into the game, right? But we have to plant the seeds to ensure that the forest retakes this village at some point.
Yeah.
And that means, what could that look like? It could look like, in practice, let's start teaching some skills to kids, even if they're not our kids, so that they can at least know that they know what's happening, right? And they know what to do. Let's start cultivating this type of awareness, at least from within my scope as a mindset coach. Somebody likes to work with that. It's like, okay, let's recalibrate our filters to say that I'm living in a world without the shade of a tree that should have been planted 50 years ago. Let me plant a tree now that 50 years from now, people will get to enjoy its shade and its branches and its leaves, right? What could that look like? Education, learning how to cultivate food, changing the socioeconomic landscape, advocating for greater social justice, and knowing that we may not get it for the people who are alive.
Right.
But let's change the political system and vote for people who will create a more just system, right, down the line. Let's advocate for inclusivity. Let's heal people right now as we can, especially people who want to have kids themselves, who want to raise kids themselves. And see, these are all the big things that I want to do. Do I know as of this recording whether or not it works? No. But if we're really being honest, no coaching program knows the future.
No.
No coaching program can do that. So my goal to marry personal growth with personal depth, leading to a better future for not just the personal, right?
Grow deeply.
Yeah.
Grow deeply.
Grow deeply. Yeah. And that's like as of this time, I don't know what it will be like, but I want to try.
And it's the intention behind it. So some things that have had good intentions didn't turn out well, and some things that have had good intentions turned out great, but you don't know unless you take action and try, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I finally got my, here's a list of concepts that I do, right? Like, I do the ancestry stuff, the getting clear on your location stuff, right? Getting into a hope-free context. Hope is useful when you're feeling low. Beyond that, it can become procrastination if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So how do you? But we're in a hope, positive thinking society, so we have to combat the messaging, right? Understanding gestation. We talk about the law of attraction, but we don't talk enough about the law of gestation. Some things take time to grow, right? Anyone who's ever had children knows that from the time that you announce that you're pregnant to the time that you actually give birth, it's not 3 days.
No.
But yet it's like having the spouse or the partner go up to their partner who's pregnant and say, like, where's the baby already? Come on. It's like, no, it's going to take its time, right? So gestation, we talk about that. Being able to sit with tension. We don't do this enough. That's why we tend to demonize the other. The polarization comes from the inability to bear disagreement, right?
Right.
And conflicting ideas in our heads. The community mindedness, the ecology mindedness, the legacy mindedness, and most importantly, I think, wholeness and completeness as you are, which may mean that if you join a mastermind, like say, once I start charging for these masterminds, you get enough out of it and you say you're done, I'm not going to give you another thing to try to keep you. It means you're done.
Right.
Thank you. You're full. Go forth now and go do something, right? In the real world outside of this group. Go be useful. Being useful isn't a matter of how valuable you are. You're a human being. You're valuable just by being here. Utility and value need to be separated a little bit, right? We need to disentangle them, because your utility has nothing. In some contexts, your utility has nothing to do with your personal worth. But if I'm going to heal your personal worth, right? Let's do that so that you are free to choose utility. And paradoxically, by choosing to give to something beyond yourself, something will come back to you that will give you the same things that you think freedom's going to give you.
Right.
There's a difference between freedom and isolation, right? And these are the types of things I want to work on, right? Let's do the hard discernment work. Amazing. Rather than the easy bumper sticker work. And my expectation, my theory is that this will lead to greater overall wellness. You'll make better physical decisions for your physical health, your nutrition, the nutrition of what we're growing out in terms of crops and agriculture, and overall lifestyle, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of that stuff. It's the soul may actually be out there that we need to heal.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it may be.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's like, because I've never heard anyone trying to approach it this way, I love it, my friend. I'm like, I want to come into your masterminds. I want to talk to you all the time. I want to have these conversations, because part of it is like having more than just, if you sit alone with your thoughts, that's one thing, but it's the interaction and the sharing of ideas and the spreading outwards, which makes the difference, right? Which is amazing. I'm super excited for you and
Thank you.
all this stuff that you're working on. And definitely, I want to know how your experiments are going. And if people, because I think people are going to, some people, because it's because you stand up and you plant your flag, some people are going to go, oh my God, that Jody, he's too crazy. Some people are going to go, that Jody, I need to talk to him. And so I'm going to make sure that the information is there for you, for them to reach out and connect with you.
Certainly.
In chats, in the notes, and everywhere. Do you have anything that you want people to hook into?
Right now, my Instagram presence is my main focus. Instagram has its own problems built in, but I like it. I generally like it because it's a better storytelling tool.
Yeah.
I think for what I'm doing. So my Instagram handle is Jody Aberdeen, right?
Yeah.
You could reach me there. You can reach me on LinkedIn, and I have I'll be updating my website now that I have my framework built. Aside from that, though, just be forewarned, if you connect with me on Instagram, it is not a coaching account. It is mine,
That's all right.
which encompasses the things that I'm enthusiastic about, which also include other things that are not coaching, like craft beer and and food and travel and politics and writing, all these different things, right? This is for now. I may keep it that way. I did have a coaching profile on Instagram, and I found that it's the same thing. I'm using the master's tools to dismantle the master's house type of thing.
Yeah.
That type of idea. And it's like, I didn't quite like it. And I was
But also, I think coaches, because I mean, I have multiple Instagram accounts, but with you saying that, warning people that it has more than just coaching on it. But I think if I'm going to be a coach, I can't slice that piece out of me and say that you're just talking to the coach. You're getting the person.
Yeah.
So I feel like they should know who the person is that they're talking to. Right?
Yeah. So like follow me there for sure. You're absolutely right. And I can't. It's one thing that I do, but it's also the entirety of what I do. Almost all these other life experiences have led me to this, right? Because again, I don't want, for myself, I've tried not to hire coaches. I success and failure at times, right? But the best people who have mentored me have gotten experiences. They're not dogmatic about what they know, right? When I run into somebody who's a dogmatist, I'm like, okay, well, I'll learn what your specialty is, but you're not my long-term mentor, right?
Right.
I like seeing people who have gotten their hands dirty in the muck of the real world and then married that with whatever frameworks they're developing based on different teachers, right? The eclectic approach to me, as long as it leads to something of value for the person or people that you're helping, is preferable to just somebody who says that, okay, follow this template, this creed, and you're all set. You're not all set. The world's not that simple.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
Step by step by step by step.
Exactly.
At all.
Exactly.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay. Whew, that was a lot, you guys. But all so really good. We could keep talking, but I'm going to just say thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. For sure, anybody who wants to reach out to Jody, make sure you come and have a conversation with this man, because I'm sure there's even more in there to learn and to untangle, which is amazing. Do you have a parting word for everyone?
Well, first, just to thank you for your time and for, it takes two to have any conversation. So thank you for holding the space for me.
Absolutely.
And for these ideas to come out. I don't think they would have emerged the same way. It's different with every person, right? Like, so I don't think this could have emerged without you. So thank you so much. And for everyone, just do your best, whatever that is in any given day. And these are crazy times. I don't pretend to have any answers. I don't think I think we should have a mild distrust of anyone who claims to know the answers. But I would say this, right? Go outside, see what's there. If there's one thing you do today, just do that. Go outside and see what's there as it is, and just connect with that.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, my friends.
Thank you.
I hope you all have a beautiful day. Stay tuned for future developments. Take care. Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Just give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help, and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.